System.out.println and system.out.print statements. In the first part cover of this lesson, you only saw the system.out.println statement, but I decided to also add the system.out.print statement. There is a difference between the two of them and how they display information on the user's screen or on the console. By the way, the console is where the user gets to see information that you would like them to enter or information about your program and whatever you need to include to display to the user. The question is, how are statements displayed in a Java program? When we talk about statements, we mean sentences, we mean information that you need the user to see. How would you display such an information? If you need the user to enter something, how would you show that user the information? The println and print output statements. There are two ways to use output statements in Java programming language. So basically this means there are two ways of how you can display information to the user on their screen. Let's look at the first one, system.out.println. Now, whenever you use this output statement, it basically prints text information on separate lines. That is why it has the ln in front of the print. I don't know if you've noticed, but the difference between the two of them is one has an ln and one does not. So next line. How do we apply the system.out.println statement in Java programming language? Well, it's very simple. First, you just have to write down system with a capital S and then .out.println and then open parenthesis. And when you open the parenthesis, you're going to put quotation marks and write enclosed between two quotation marks, you're going to be writing whatever you want to display on the user's screen. And then you have to close parenthesis and put a semicolon. Now, one very important thing to remember is a semicolon is really essential in Java. You have to have a semicolon. The semicolon is what you end most statements with, especially output statements. It is a way of closing statements in Java, so there should always be a semicolon. So if you're having an error in your program, it's most likely because you're missing a semicolon. So these are things you should be very aware of. Again, remember that the println statement is just used to print things on separate lines. It doesn't mean it's going to print hello on one line and print world on another line. No, it just means that whatever statement you've included in one print statement, it will print on one line. And if you have another system.out.println statement, that will automatically come on the second line. So as you can see, if I actually put this in my Java program as system.out.println and I put hello world and enclose quotation marks, then if I run this program, it's just going to display hello world on the screen. And that's the output. Now, what about the second type of output statements? This is the system.out.print statement. Now, this statement is used to print statements or sentences or text or information on the same lines without spacing. So, for example, if I had a system.out.print with the absence of the ln and I put hello in closing quotation marks and I went down to my next line in my program, in my Java program, I hit enter and I went down to the next line and I wrote system.out.print again and I put another statement or another word, in this case I wrote world, then if I run this program, how would it be displayed? It will display both hello and world in one line, but without spacing. So what I meant about displaying things on separate lines, you guys may be wondering, but isn't this on the same line? It's not exactly on separate lines if you said the difference between println and print. What I mean here, guys, is if I actually had a system.out.println and I said hello and I had another one on a separate line as system.out.println again and I said world, what's going to happen is when you run the program, it's going to print these two things on separate lines. It's not going to be on the same line. They're going to be on separate lines. One will print hello and the other one will print world. So that's what I mean by separate lines when you use ln. But because we're using prints, then the computer is considering them as one thing or one word together. So therefore it's printing hello. Even though you've put two different statements, it's still going to print hello and then world together. So no spacing is applied. But of course, don't think that we cannot have spacing in this type of print statements. We actually can. If we do hello, for example, if you wrote hello here and you gave one extra space with your space bar and you run the program, it will still print hello and then the space and world. So you can actually put spacing. But the thing is, you still are printing two separate words on the same line when you use print instead of on one line, like when you use println. And if I had a println on one line and I said hello or anything else, and I had a println on a separate line, then those two things would have printed on separate lines, not on the same line as you would see with print. Now we're going to be moving on to the last programming concept of this lesson before we get our hands on actually creating your first Java project, or program rather, in a mini Java project. The last concept is the Java syntax.